Hello, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Holly Meadows. I am working with Tulane's business development, their medical school business development office this week, but I am full-time with a firm called TreMonti LLC. And we do full service innovation management for technology transfer offices and institutes all over the country. And we even have some international clients. I'm going to introduce everyone up here. And as I introduce you, I'd like you to take just a minute and just give a brief overview of yourself, just like I just did. So first we have Dr. Diana Wetmore, Vice President of Therapeutics and Development and COO at Harrington Discovery Institute. Hi, Diana.
Yes, hello. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a biochemist by training, decided to do a postdoc at a pharmaceutical company and fell in love with drug discovery. So over the next 30 years, I've worked in both for-profit and not-for-profit environments, including the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, where we worked on the first disease-modifying drug for cystic fibrosis with Vertex Pharmaceuticals. And now I work at an institute as part of University Hospitals in Cleveland called Harrington Discovery Institute. And we fund academics who are developing concepts for new drugs in areas of unmet need. And then we also assist them with pharmaceutically trained consultants that we bring to the table to move that along, just like as if it were a virtual pharma.
She said the good F word, fund. Okay. Next, we have Marc Malandro, Dr. Marc Malandro, Vice President of Science Operations at the Zuckerberg Initiative.
Hi, thanks. Appreciate the invitation. I'm trained as a scientist as well. I'm a molecular biologist by training, did my postdoc at Case Western in Cleveland, and then pretty quickly jump ship to industry. And I did many things, and I'd find myself at the University of Pittsburgh for 14 years, where I was Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And then in 2017, went to help start the science program at a new philanthropy called the Zuckerberg Initiative. And so we fund basic biomedical research at the interface between science and technology. We're a tech-based philanthropy. About half the people who work in our organization are software engineers. And we are organized around something called Build, Fund, and Do. So we build software tools, free and open to the public. We fund basic biomedical research, and then we do research in our biohubs. We have one in San Francisco and one in Chicago. Our Artificial Natural Intelligence Institute at Harvard, and the CZI Advanced Biological Imaging Institute in Redwood City, California, looking at visual proteomics.
Thank you, Marc. That's so exciting. And last but certainly not least, my friend Caitlyn Barrett, Associate Director, Center for Strategic Philanthropy at the Milken Institute.
Thanks so much, Holly. It's such a pleasure to be here on the stage with these fantastic people. You guys have the Case Western link. I was actually at Pitt when you were, Marc. I was in the Pittsburgh Institute of Neurodegenerative Diseases after I got my PhD at Vanderbilt in cancer biology. After that, I went to the federal landscape, worked at the NCI, and then I worked at Cure Search for Children's Cancer. And now I'm at the Milken Institute, which many know of as a think tank, nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. But the work that I do is actually helping foundations become the wonderful things that the Harrington family made the Harrington Discovery Institute and that the Zuckerberg Initiative is, where we've done due diligence, we've seen where the needs are, and we've been able to produce a funding opportunity that is really meaningful to a particular philanthropist and really leverages the resources that they have and the relationships that they have.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to be very conversational. I've got a couple of questions, some directed to you all individually, and some just be brave and jump in. But I would love to hear from all of you anytime you have anything to add. So, Marc, I'm going to start with you. We've heard a little bit about CZI just now. They're focused on problems big, like eradicating disease, building tools. But what opportunities do you see that the Gulf Coast region could add to in CZI's efforts?
Well, I think that what we've learned over the time, we still have a lot to learn. We've only been doing this for about 6 or 7 years, is that good science exists everywhere. And we've learned that we have to go to places, and we have to do outreach so people know of us, know the things we're doing, know how we could potentially help them and how they can help us. We've also been experimenting with different types of funding and different ways of funding and different ways of accessing expertise that exists in other places. And so one of the things we fund with some others is the Sciologues program that gets scientists together, Sciologue, science and dialogue, to get scientists together to put together proposals, to work together as fellows, and to really come up with things that you can fund. And in the imaging space, we've now funded 2 investigators at Tulane, early stage investigators, through that. So we don't want to be seen as a philanthropy that only works in California and Boston. That's why one of the reasons our new biohub is in Chicago. There's great science everywhere, and we want people to know about us and know how we can help them.
Wonderful. Caitlyn, the Milken Institute has been equally transformational with Fast Cures and your Center for Strategic Philanthropy. We've heard a little bit about. Can you tell us a bit more about the center and about how you feel that academic centers and companies could help achieve your goals?
A lot of the work that we do, it starts with building a relationship with the philanthropist, better understanding what their goals are, what their motivation is. Often they work within, or they're interested in working within, the rare disease space or mental disorders. And a lot of times that's because they have been within that ecosystem and they've seen the shortcomings and they want to make a difference. So a lot of what we do is really knowledge generation, and the best thing that we can get in communication with institutions, academics, is really just understanding where there is exciting work going on, where there are innovations, where there is transformational work being done, so that we can better leverage that as we talk to philanthropists and as we think about advising them about what the best direction to go in is. They'll come to us with a problem, perhaps in pediatric brain cancer, for example, but we'll talk to people that work in rare diseases, that work in biotechs that are developing therapeutics in rare diseases. We talk to regulatory. So it's an open door. It's the willingness to donate your time and help us learn more about what you do that's most important for my work.
Great. Diana, I know that the Harrington Discovery Institute has a unique and different model as well. I'd like you to expand upon that and how academic and research institutions can feed into the model under which you work.
So thank you. Yes, what we believe in the Harrington Discovery Institute is that in this day and age, where according to Tufts Institute, it costs $1.5 billion plus on average to bring a new drug forward to where a doc can write an RX on a pad. And that's not the kind of money NIH is going to give academic and investigators. And so what we're trying to do is to find a way to help those fantastic scientists that have cutting edge ideas think about it from the perspective of the future investors, which is the pharma companies who might license it, or the venture capitalists who might fund a startup company. And so we start with putting out a call for applications, and we're looking for great science with a great starting point for a new drug, and it's novel, and it would have an impact on medical care. And then over a 2-year period, in addition to grant funding, we bring this expertise to the table to help think about it from a different framework. That means putting the right intellectual property protection in place. And it means having the right validation studies. And it means knowing how to talk to a partner who's interested in investing. And it means understanding who your competition is and how your product, if it were to succeed, is going to measure up against something that someone else has in the clinic. So we kind of tackle all those things at once, but we do it on the pace that the science itself is driving.
Very good. Very thoughtful approach. I know you all three work kind of at that intersection of academia and research versus corporate and investor world. What are some changes or advancements that you think are occurring in that intersection now that you think are positive?
Jump in to start with, and that is that I think I mentioned I did a postdoc at DuPont Merck Pharmaceutical Company. And at that time, back in the 90s, pharma was doing all their own R&D.
Mhm.
So then pharma decided, well, we'll let biotech do the R&D and we'll just buy them up when they're successful.
Right.
And then biotech decided that they needed to be one asset companies. And so now pharma's finally realizing if we're not embedded in academia at some point, we're going to miss out on the next big breakthrough.
Mhm.
We're going to miss out on the next big gene therapy breakthrough, or the next big technology delivery, or the next big cancer concept that's going to be applicable broadly. And so one of the developments I think is that there's a lot more appreciation for the foundation that scientists make in academia amongst the ultimate partners.
Great point.
Speaking of foundations, I think that one of the things that's really been helpful is the recognition that academics are really well suited to collaborate and build clinical trial networks, build resources that are really going to be useful to industry when they need to start assessing a drug. And I think especially in the rare disease space, especially what we've seen in pediatric cancer, is that companies can't do it without the academic institutions, without the patients, without that collaboration. And it's a beautiful mix between the two groups where pharma can get something done and academics want to learn. They want to understand if something didn't work, why, as opposed to putting something on a shelf without really understanding if maybe you had a better biomarker or better selection strategy, you could have a better potential for a therapeutic to move forward. So I think there's a lot of just that communication, just the use of infrastructure from one to the other is really beneficial.
Yeah, we've always funded academic institutions through our traditional grant making, but I think what we realized some time ago was number one is we can't just follow NIH in funding because we don't have that much money. Our budget is about 1% of the NIH budget every year. So we have to do things new. We have to do things unique. And so what we decided to try to do in the work that we do ourselves is to set up regionally focused research institutions that can collaborate with universities and bring them together. So in San Francisco, we set up our BioHub there, which develops platforms and funds high risk, high reward research, no preliminary data, things that the NIH wouldn't fund, with faculty from Stanford, UCSF, and Berkeley. A great model. At least we think it's a great model. So much so that we expanded it to Chicago for University of Chicago, Northwestern, and the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So we truly believe in catalyzing regional collaboration. You know, not every place has the work that you guys are doing here in bringing the regional academic institutions together. Sometimes, you know, when we did it before, people, faculty members at Berkeley would never talk to faculty members at UCSF. Mm-hmm. So we decided to try to catalyze this. And so far, we think the experiment is working. We're going to continue to develop biohubs. And it doesn't work unless it's with academic institutions. And it doesn't work unless they're doing high risk, high reward stuff.
So I'm going to flip that question. I'm going to come back to you, Marc, actually. So do you think there are still friction points, or what could, you know, what would you like to see more positive steps that would come out of this intersection in academia and corporate world? I'm hearing communication and respect for everyone's kind of lane or highway and collaboration, but what else could we be doing better, even with this audience in mind? But you won't hurt our feelings. Let us know.
Well, I would think it's respect for the outcomes each group wants and trying to align those as much as possible. Since what we do is open science, everything we do is free and open to the public. It's in the public domain. So we supported a lot of work of people doing single cell research and the human cell atlas community. And that was not just at academic institutions, it was with companies too. So we had to develop with our university partners approaches to things like intellectual property that would allow all these things to coexist and would allow free data sharing. And we developed the data platform that they can do that data sharing on, a tool called Cell by Gene. But it's alignment of interests that you really have to work on. And I would say second is in academia, there's no thought about project management. But when you're in a company, there's these project managers, and they're some of the most valuable people you have. And so being able to understand that there's need for projects to move along, to be steered, to have accountability in ways that I don't think the academic environment is still used to. So for all of our large grants, they have to build in a project manager because we found it so useful to us, and it aligns you with working with industry a little bit better because they're used to this whole aspect of project and product management.
I really can't add much to what Marc said beyond reiterating that communication and understanding where the other's coming from. And I think often we hear that industry needs to talk to regulatory sooner, but I think that academics and industry need to be talking sooner too, so that they can build those alignments and so they can better understand where they're coming from before they pursue some of the collaborative projects that they're working on.
It's great. This is just a question for all three of you. How do you evaluate and kind of score how your funding and how your projects perform in the end? How are you evaluating the funding outcomes?
I'm sure that we all look at it slightly differently, depending on the mission of our respective organizations. We start with a rigorous review by 4 different reviewers when we get a grant application in. 2 of them are academic reviewers who are specialists in the field because we're disease agnostic. And 2 of them are industry experienced reviewers that come from my cohort of advisors in my team. And one of the project managers that we have on team works with me to do some diligence in the background to make sure that the institute in question really controls the IP that's been referenced in the application and that sort of thing, and that the applicant is really a faculty member. And so once those 4 scores are evaluated, we create a short list, and that short list goes to a scientific advisory board. So everything that's on the short list has to pass kind of muster in 2 areas. It's novel, it would have impact, and we think it's developable. We think we could make a drug out of it, provided that the science keeps up. So that short list goes to the scientific advisory board, and that board makes a recommendation that is just, what's the most exciting, most impactful, best science of this set? Okay. Yeah.
I guess I'll focus a little bit more on outcomes than how the projects come in. So we have a group called our Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Group, which focuses specifically on trying to understand if the things we funded had the impact we thought they would. It's not as easy as bibliometrics. Yes, you can count publications, but we have a program that funds essential open source software and just funds the maintenance of the software. And so trying to evaluate that by publications in Cell Science and Nature aren't going to work. But if you evaluate that by traditional product metrics, since all of these exist in GitHub and what is some people call alt metrics, gives you the ability to understand whether or not those things you're funding are as impactful as you hope. We also have external evaluations that we do on our programs because they tell you qualitative information. I talked about the single cell work we were funding, and when our external evaluators reviewed it, what was most impactful is we would fund it before anyone else did. And so it was a time function. And so that also tells us that's probably time to think about how to transition that work in a little bit different way. Our rare disease work is helping rare patient groups organize themselves. They're not going to have seminal publications for a long period of time. Some don't even have scientific advisors working with them. And so we've found, at least because of all the experimentation that we do, that you need several different models of impact. And it does go well beyond just publications.
And I'd have to agree on the several models of impact. And for us, that's really clear because we're almost incubators for foundations, where we're starting up foundations whose goals at the very beginning will be variable. So we have one group working in follicular lymphoma. The foundation is really focused on drug development. We have groups that are working in bipolar disorder that are really focused on patient experience. And so we have to think about our impact metrics as they pertain to each individual program that we're looking at. And it can be very variable, but it starts when you're developing, when you're building that strategy. You recognize what the most important aspects are for the philanthropists that you're working with, for the program that you're developing, and that informs the impact measures. If they're talking about drug development, then you're going to be looking at number of INDs, clinical trials, patients going through clinical trials. If the interest is more patient support, there might be wellness surveys, there might be other aspects that you look at. So I think that in the panel prep document, it said, go ahead and just be real. You want, we're still
Please.
working on it. In all reality, it's a moving target, and we're still trying to understand how to measure impact, especially when we're considering we've got all of these different programs. I mean, we can say we've influenced $1.8 billion going into the healthcare system and research, but what that looks like beyond that is still something we're working on figuring out.
Sure. I'd like to add to that. Thank you for that to my colleagues. It is really important to say what is the actual outcome you're trying to achieve. And we don't actually track how much money we put in, how many publications come out from our scholars, or how much additional money they leverage. We track how many projects found a commercial partner, how many licenses to pharma, how many spin-out companies were funded by venture, and how many projects made it into the clinic. Our ultimate measure is going to be how many approved drugs. So far, we don't have any yet, but we have 2 in phase 3. And that brings me to one more question about making it real, is if there's one message that I can convey to our academic colleagues, is that time is not your friend in drug discovery. The clock is ticking from the time you first have your idea and discovery. The faster we can get it into clinic to see if it's going to work, the better the chances that we're going to be able to access the funds that it'll take to get it approved. Because at the end of the day, it has to have a market. And so
It's such a great point, and such a difficult one in a way, because science is inexact. And so a lot of research and funded research comes down to, or the success of that comes down to, kind of compressing time and money. How do you all, and I would like you all to answer, how important is that to you? Because I heard someone mention follow-on funding, which is also nice words for us. But, how do you, how important is that to you? The compression of time and money, the speed in an inexact world, and in an environment where people are, learning for learning's sake, as well as trying to transfer science to patients.
important in drug discovery, and we have project managers on staff. Every project gets a project manager assigned. That project manager is charged with working with the team to create the critical path to funding, the critical path to IND discussion with the FDA, the critical path to moving things forward. That is a phrase that you hear in project management language. It means basically not just what's interesting that we could pursue, but what do we need to do next? And what do we need to anticipate? And keeping your eye on how fast can we get there? Not without knowledge, but not without distractions.
I think that when we're often working with patients or families of patients, time is always of the essence. It's always the big thought. You hear from families who are using drugs that were developed 30 years ago, and they're upset about it, and they want to see change. And I think that what we have found is that philanthropy has a really great opportunity to start driving that speed. And I think it's because we are risk tolerant, we are able to move quickly, and we're able to think about, how do you build an infrastructure that's meaningful? How do you stimulate collaborations? We have that opportunity beyond the systems that are already in place. And I think that is a big aspect, is thinking about how the funding can be leveraged to make the biggest difference in the way that the families really want it to be. And often that means long-term sustained significant funding to make sure that the researchers do have the time to focus on that work and do have the opportunity to learn and optimize and make things work in a way that's going to be really meaningful.
I think you just have to be crisp at what your outcomes are before you go into the funding. So we had our Rare as One convening a few weeks ago with all of the patient family groups that we support. And there's nothing more lighting a fire under you than a parent of a child with a rare disease telling you, get this done, get it done now. But on the other hand, we also fund infrastructure. And so we fund the bioRxiv and medRxiv preprint servers. We're the sole funders. And we want that to be durable. So we are into that for the tens of years. And so it's just understanding the impact you want to make and the time frame you want to make it, but understanding that acceleration of this work is necessary sort of across the board. We all want to do science faster. You wouldn't have computers if you didn't want to do science faster. But understanding as a funder, those things you're funding and why, and constantly reassess if what you thought at the beginning is still true now.
So speaking about accelerating science or, kind of staying on the critical path, I know CZI has a new AI initiative to accelerate science. I wanted to ask all of you trends that you're seeing, positive trends that you're seeing in getting things done faster or more to plan.
Bob, thanks. Yeah, we announced that we're going to build a large GPU cluster in a philanthropy. The goal is to make the work we do free and open to the public, and to sort of have the balance between sort of academia and what tech companies with much more resources than we have. And so it's our way of learning from, we've been doing machine learning and AI for a long period of time. We funded the Kempner Institute for the study of natural and artificial intelligence before large language model and generative AI became the thing. So it has been something as a tech-based philanthropy we've been into for a long period of time, but trying to figure out the real application of it and not the hallucinations of it. I think we're trying to spend some time on it, and that's why we announced that we're working in that area.
I think everything that CZI is doing is so incredible in that space. And I think that we each have to find our niches and where we're well suited to work. What I can say is that this open science trajectory is the biggest boon in machine learning and AI. I think that when we're trying to separate out the hallucinations, it's going to take more data. And I think that it's really important that we continue to share data, that academics are doing so, that companies are doing so, or this is not going to be successful. There's a lot of money going into this. There's a lot of interest in this. And it's going to be very important to accelerate and to address some of the precision medicine aims and how our healthcare systems work. All of it's going to be very important for, but we have to start with the right data and building the right models.
And I'll just add one thing that's very encouraging is that the regulatory agencies understand the needs of ultra-rare disease. And they have been moving in the direction of having earlier conversations with potential sponsors to understand what is actually needed to do something very novel with a very small group of patients, or maybe an N of 1. And that's particularly true in the UK. One of the reasons why we're transatlantic and why we're focusing our rare disease efforts with Oxford transatlantically. Because now we can go, which regulatory agency is going to be most interested in working with us early and trying to understand, do we really need to do 2 different animal tox studies? Maybe not for this particular. So I think they're being a lot more open and flexible than perhaps in years past. Great.
We have just a few minutes left. I'd like you each to, I'm just going to have each wrap up and then we'll take questions. I'd like you each to just give us, you have a room full of people that would love to hear your best advice for how to approach your institution or how to engage with your institution if they're interested in seeking funding or collaboration.
Put anybody on the distribution list who gives me their email, and whenever we have calls for applications open, you'll get an email about it. And watch our website.
Yeah, most of our work is through competitive funding. And so please just ensure that you keep checking our website. We do probably 5 to 10 RFAs a year in areas as varied from imaging to neurodegeneration. So please make sure you're looking there, and we'll continue to keep doing outreach and trying to expand the ways and types of ways we fund.
We're rather unique in that, based on our partners' desires and needs, is how we kind of engage with academics and with the funding ecosystem. And it starts really, you'll know that we're starting to work in your area if I call you and I say, I'd really like to do a key opinion leader interview and understand where your barriers, challenges are, where you see the most opportunity in the field. And then we also, once the other aspect of what we do that goes beyond the think tank part of the Milken Institute is that we can actually build grant programs. We can write requests for proposals. So once I understand what it is that you're interested in and what it is that you do, those opportunities as they come out of our organization, I can share them with you. So I just want to get to know as many people as I can that are doing really good, innovative, and collaborative work.
Great. I think I had a question down here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Benson Conforti. I'm visiting from Palo Alto, California. I happen to be also on the board of the AIH. If you haven't heard of the AIH, it's the Alliance for Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare. We're a consortium or a coalition of over 55 companies advocating for responsible and ethical adoption of AI in healthcare and life sciences. So everything that I've been hearing on this panel is music to my ears. I wish that, the industry would have thought the same way about collaboration, about data sharing, around qualifying data, and et cetera, et cetera. I would love to touch one thing that Marc has mentioned, which is aligning incentives or aligning the intentions or having an alignment between all the parties in the ecosystem, and send you back that question, like, how do you think, what would be the best way to create an alignment?
I think that when there are incentives, you find alignments. So I think that, and this is they do, but that is where I feel like philanthropy can push that alignment. I'm not giving you the funding unless you're willing to work with all of these different stakeholders. It's not always that easy, but that's kind of that's one of the things that we're thinking about.
Okay, I just wanted to say that this is an open invitation for the 3, Milken, CZI, and also Harrington, to engage with us, because we do a lot of work in this space, including policy and regulation, and there's a lot of wonderful things that we can do. Thank you.
Caitlyn, Marc, Diana, thank you all so much. It's been wonderful.